conversation with Laura Funk, a longtime retreat facilitator, workshop leader with her organization Butterfly Journeys, and currently the spiritual director in residence at Mennonite Church, Manitoba. And of course, the reason for this celebration, the author of the new book, People and Places of Sacred Interior Spaces, Midrashic Monologues and Guided Meditations, which brings together her years of facilitation, writing, education, and spiritual direction. She and we are grateful that you have joined us. It's wonderful to be able to gather again in this space in person, and to also be with you who are participating via live stream from across Canada, places in the United States, and I understand as far away as Honduras and Ireland. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to Daryl, who's on the camera, who is helping make this possible. I also welcome those who are viewing this at a future date. Welcome to everyone. For those of you participating online, I invite you to send a chat message with your name and location. Laura particularly would love to know who is all joining us. And also, each name in the chat will be entered together with the names of the people here automatically into a raffle for the door prize at the end of the program, which is 2 digital copies of Laura's book. My name is Arlen. I'm the director of Common Word, which is a national Anabaptist bookstore and library jointly operated by Mennonite Church Canada and Canadian Mennonite University, where it's possible to buy or borrow or access resources online. You can browse 13,000 carefully selected items and learn much more about us at commonword.ca. It's our privilege to be hosting tonight's conversation. We're in for a good evening. In addition to speaking herself and giving us an inside scoop on the book, Laura has invited several special guests tonight. Steve Bell, well-loved songwriter and storyteller from Signpost Music, will provide several musical offerings. Dorothy Fontaine, Director of Missions at Mennonite Church, Manitoba, an early fan of Laura's book, will give her review. And Tina Fair-Kaler, who has, among other things, performed in radio plays and Low German skits, will offer a rendition of one of the book's monologues. There will also be a question and answer time with Laura following the presentations. And those of you online, please submit your question or comment in the chat, and I will try to attend to those in addition to facilitating the conversation here. And of course, after the event, the book will be available to purchase in person or online at commonword.ca. Welcome here. I'll invite Steve to come forward for his first song, followed by Dorothy.
Hello, I'm Steve Bell, or am I? It's really good to be here. It's nice to be, where there's warm bodies to sing to. I've spent the last year and a half singing to cameras, and so it's kind of lovely to have like real sort of flesh and blood in the room. So but it's also just an honor to come and sing for the opening of this book. Laura and I have known each other for a very long time. And Laura worked with me for several years at Signpost Music, and so we've got a long connection and a deep fondness for each other. And it was lovely. I actually got a chance to read her book. I went up on a retreat a couple weeks ago and got a chance to take it up there with me. And it just wasn't what I was expecting. And I'm always nervous when I read a friend's book, right? Because what are you going to say, right? I don't like your baby, right? Like it's yeah. But I was quite drawn in by it, and I was up at this lovely cabin, and I just found myself sort of soaking in it, and it was different than I was expecting, and that was a nice surprise, and it kind of pulled me in a way that I wasn't expecting. So it was really lovely, and it's the kind of book that is going to stay beside the bed for a very long time, because you can sort of pick it up, and if you need some kind of way of getting into that space, that prayerful space, sometimes you need help, you can just open up to any one of those monologues or those prayers or those guided meditations, and they're really wonderful. So I'm happy to be part of this. Thanks for asking me. Love is our way to God, for God is love. Love is our way to God, for God is love. The wilderness road of shame is gone. The desert road of dislocation gone. The stony road of loneliness has now become a royal way, a highway home. Love is our way to God, for God is love. Love is our way to God, for God is love. And all who carry disappointment, come. And you who fear the fire of judgment, come. And you who teach this royal way is not for some. Shame on you. Now lovers come, 'cause love is our way to God, for God is love. Love is our way to God, for God is love. Love is patient, love is kind. Love pays ill, no, never mind. Love refines the finest gold, the charity of saintly souls. The only thing left for us to do is love. If this alone be done, it is enough. And as we love each other, God abides in us. God unseen, but seen in love. Love is our way to God, for God is love. Love is our way to God, for God is love. Love is our way to God, for God is love. Oh, thank you. And now my sister Dorothy, and I don't mean that just like in the Lord, she's actually my sister, so there she is.
Hi, everybody. Well, Laura, thank you for inviting me to review this book. I really enjoyed reading it, and I even more enjoyed engaging with it. And I know I'll continue to use your meditation for a long, long time to come. They really are a gift, and they meant a lot to me, and so thank you. I'm going to start by saying, though, or maybe confessing, that for many of us, it's actually quite easy to ignore or neglect our interior selves for a whole host of reasons. If you're like me, for example, when life gets busy, as it generally does, my first inclination is to go home at the end of a long day and watch TV or read a book, or even better, take a nap. But setting aside time to meditate and reflect on the things going on around me and inside of me is a bit counterintuitive. Even though I grew up in a home and a community where prayer and self-reflection and other spiritual practices are encouraged. For me, it's always been a bit of a struggle. And I think it's just part of my nature. So you throw in the hopper something like a very busy day, and I'm less inclined to do it. But busyness isn't the only reason why we ignore our inner selves. In one of Laura's meditations, she likens interior spaces to a backpack that's full of memories and experiences. And while there are many good things in the backpack to be grateful for, there can also be painful things. Memories of loss, grief, voices within us or voices external to us that paint a worldview that's negative or make us question our own worth. And so for some, the idea of looking at what's going on inside can cause anxiety and it can cause fear. What if I delve into my interior spaces and discover that I really don't like what I see? Knowing all of this, and this book really, Laura really does understand this, knowing all of this, in a thoughtful and a really gentle way, Laura invites us to slip off our backpacks anyways and take an honest look at what's going on inside. And in doing this, we find, to our delight, that there are a lot of things worth keeping. Things that are good for the soul, that sustain and create life, both in the world around us and in the interior life of ourselves. Now, of course, we'll also find some things that aren't worth keeping. Either way, Laura invites us to sift through them so that we can note, value, and express gratitude for the things worth keeping while letting go of the things that aren't. She uses some powerful imagery, be it nature or everyday experiences, along with some simple prayers, meditations, blessings to guide us. This regular practice of identifying, of examining, acknowledging both the blessings and the curses in our lives. This practice of connecting in meaningful ways with both ourselves and our Creator can create fundamental shifts for the better in our lives, and also in the lives of the people around us. So I strongly, strongly encourage you to buy this book, engage with it for the meditations alone. Now, midway through this book, Laura shifts focus to also share a number of monologues of biblical characters. She does so by using the Jewish tradition of midrash. And midrash is really an ancient practice of interpreting the Torah by crafting stories that were meant to sort of stand alongside the main narrative, not replace them, but to stand alongside them. And in this tradition, there really is a lot of freedom. It not only engages the literal word of the text, but goes beyond them to interpret the things that aren't said. In fact, that's kind of the point. So Laura offers 16 midrashic monologues that bring new perspectives to the gospel narrative. It's interesting to note that many of these monologues center on people who are mentioned in the nativity and early life of Jesus. So personally, I'm really looking forward to reading them again during Advent in anticipation that they will, inspire some new insights and revelations for me. But in thinking in more general terms about midrash, I asked Laura earlier today if she thought that meditation could help people relate to the interior lives of others. I think that she would agree that as we come to know ourselves, we can more easily relate to those around us. And her monologues and her meditations certainly attest to this. People and places of sacred interior spaces is a relatable and very helpful guide for those seeking to harmonize and align their lives with the teachings and the good gifts of our Creator. Laura's years of engagement as a spiritual director, a retreat leader, and workshop facilitator helps us to do just that in meaningful and wonderfully creative ways. So thank you, Laura, for sharing this gift with us. Thank you for sharing. This is your gift.
Hello, I am going to tell you a little bit more about the book in a few moments, but I wanted to give you a little taste of it. And so I've invited my friend and internationally acclaimed actor, Tina Fair-Kaler, to present a monologue of her choice. So I just said, pick one that speaks to you, because then you will speak through it in the most genuine way. And so she picked a monologue that I have called Mary's Martha. And I've called it that for two reasons. So we're familiar with the story of Mary and Martha, the sisters who host Jesus, and read a part of their story in a moment. But it is also called Mary's Martha because I was invited to write a monologue in honor of the retirement of Dr. Mary Schertz from Anabaptist Mennonite Biblical Seminary in Elkhart, AMBS. And so rather than submit one that I'd already written, I asked for an advance copy of Mary Schertz's commentary on the book of Luke. And in there, in the introduction, she writes that Martha is one of her favorite characters from the Bible. So I thought, okay, I'm going to be bold and pick her favorite and see what comes. So I spent some time. I read everything that she wrote in her commentary about Martha, and then I just kind of let that percolate, and this is what popped out. So enjoy. Reading from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10, verse 38 to 42. As they traveled, and the they in this story is Jesus and his disciples. As they traveled, Jesus entered a village where a woman named Martha welcomed him to her home. She had a sister named Mary, who seated herself at Jesus' feet and listened to his words. Martha, who was busy with all the details of hospitality, came to Jesus and said, "Rabbi, don't you care that my sister has left me all alone to do the household tasks? Tell her to help me." Jesus replied, "Martha, Martha, you're anxious and upset about so many things, but only a few things are necessary, really only one. Mary has chosen the better part, and she won't be deprived of it."
Hello. My name is Martha of Bethany, and I'd like to offer you a glimpse into a day I experienced once with an insightful and compassionate rabbi named Jesus. We'd heard that the rabbi was coming our way, and he often stayed with us. I wanted every detail of his stay to be wonderful, so I went all out. I got out my best recipes and my best dishes. I'd heard the story he told of the Good Samaritan, and I knew that Jesus valued generous hospitality. I wanted Jesus to notice that I was like the man who cared for others, even strangers. I wanted him to be impressed by how hard I worked to be hospitable to him and to the group of people with whom he'd be traveling. I really thought this was the best way to be seen by him. Maybe He would use me as an example in one of his parables that he would tell in the future. So I made to-do lists, I went shopping for the ingredients, I cleaned the house, I enlisted my sister Mary's help and assigned her many tasks. At first, this all went well, but then after a while, my stress grew and I stopped seeing Mary as a friend and companion, and I started to boss her around and get a little more critical. I forgot about her feelings and how she might want to prepare for our visit. Mary tolerated it at first and tried to be helpful, but I know as I look back, it was wearing on her and straining on our relationship. When the rabbi finally arrived, I wasn't nearly ready. And then a group gathered outside, and I could see that there was even more people who were eager to help themselves to my generous hospitality. I sighed inside, and I doubled down on my efforts. He would not be disappointed. Then I caught sight of Mary, relaxing at Jesus' feet. Well, I lost it. I couldn't pull this off without her help. She needed to be in the kitchen helping me. After all, didn't Mary want credit from Jesus for how good a servant she was too? I tried to catch Mary's attention in subtle ways, so as not to interrupt the good teacher. But Mary was not paying attention to me. So finally, I went out to the teacher and confronted him. I demanded that he send Mary back to help me so that all these people could be fed. Well, Jesus had a different picture of how things might go. Jesus stopped his teaching and looked up at me. Then he stood up and he took my hands in his and he looked me right in the eyes. I was embarrassed. But he looked at me with such tenderness, which gave me the courage to meet his gaze. He called my name twice. He looked deep into my heart and told me what he saw there. He noticed my hospitality, that's for sure. But he also saw my motives. He noticed that I was doing all of this to try to impress him. But he told me in that moment that it's not busy work that impresses him, but rather someone's orientation of the heart. He looked at Mary, sitting at his feet, and told me that her heart was true. Slowly, I came back to my own heart. And I realized I'd treated Mary unkindly. I'd tried to conscript her into my own plans without seeing her heart. I had also misjudged the rabbi, thinking that he would be impressed by my fancy cooking rather than simple kindness. I turned my world upside down that day. He showed me that the intentions of the heart and the way that we treat each other are much more important than gourmet meals and a tidy house. I had shut joy out of my heart, and he let it back in. Instead of shaming me, he saw me for who I was and what I needed to hear, and he helped me come back to myself. What happened next, though? That was a miracle. Jesus took me back inside and looked over the kitchen. He saw what I was trying to do there, and he saw, of course, right to the heart of things. He knew how badly I wanted to impress him with fancy food, and so he looked right into my eyes, paused, and I saw a little twinkle, and suggested he suggested a simpler menu. What he did next, that took my breath away. He told Philip, Judas, and James to slip into the kitchen and get a few things ready for lunch. But my pots? I protested weakly. Jesus smiled at me, took my hands again, and said, "Your pots will be fine." And he led me back to the courtyard where he had been teaching and invited me to sit down with Mary. Oh man, deep in my heart, that's where I wanted to be, to learn from this amazing teacher about how to live into God's reign. Oh, time with him always seemed so short, so I wanted more of his teachings, his presence, his wisdom. Deep down, I was so glad for the way that he'd rearranged things. And the disciples, they didn't do too badly in the kitchen. It wasn't as fancy as I'd planned, but everyone had enough and nothing was burned. They even helped with the cleanup after everyone else had left. Jesus really was teaching a new way. During our conversation, I'd asked Jesus to tell Mary what to do. I realized later what I was doing is I was trying to hide behind Jesus' authority rather than to take responsibility for my own. It wasn't fair to ask Mary to give up such a treasure of an opportunity to sit at Jesus' feet and learn. And in my heart of hearts, I knew that Jesus wouldn't have sent her back to the kitchen. I was overwhelmed with the work that I set out for myself, when something entirely different was needed. Time with Jesus was short. I didn't need to crowd all my activities designed to impress him into it. We both needed to be at his feet, learning from him and changing because of him and growing more deeply in character and love. I still struggle with the tendency to forget about other people's hearts. I still sometimes get bossy with Mary or someone else close to me. But I remember that day when my heart felt different and how Jesus showed me how to look outside of myself and care for others. Then I feel deep gratitude for how he treated me. I remember how he looked at me, and I try to look at others like that, instead of just as a resource to be used.
Wow, thank you. I wrote that? Oh, this is such a gift. I'm just going to take a moment here. Oh, yeah, thank you, Tina. That just really made it come alive. Yeah, that was beautiful. And Dorothy, thank you for your wonderful words. That's so, yeah, it's amazing when I'm sitting there in my own little world, writing my own little words, right? And you don't know, you release them into the world, a little like teenagers or adult children, and you just push them off and hope they're okay. And Steve, that song was perfect. I didn't ask you to do any specific song to open, but that, yeah, love's the way to God. That's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to help people find their way to their own interior spaces, where they can meet some of the folks from the Bible, where they can encounter stuff in their backpacks, where they can find that spaciousness, find that reorientation, right? That brings them closer to the divine breath, to who we are all individually made to be. That's my hope. That's my hope in my vocation as spiritual direction. That's my hope in this little book that we're releasing to the world today. So how did this all start? Maybe you want to know. There'll be time for Q&A, so if you have a question, let me know. But for a moment, I'll just start back from the beginning. It was a fall day in 2019, back in the day when we could still travel. Gilbert and I were on a retreat at St. John's Abbey in Collegeville, Minnesota, with the good monks, Benedictine monks. And I had a bit of time on my own, so I went for a long walk around the lake. And somewhere along that retreat, I felt this nudge. I had written a guided meditation and used it in a conference that we were part of producing. And people came up to me afterwards and asked for copies of that. And they responded and told me that some of their experiences, that happened during that time. And I thought, oh, okay, this is connecting. This is connecting. That's wonderful. So at that retreat, I just felt tugged to write a few more. And so I did. I made it a personal practice, a discipline, to kind of stick my antenna up into the air. Like my good friend Steve talks about, he sticks his antenna up and he gets songs. And not nearly as musical as he is. So this is what I got. And so over the next year or so, I would just listen and watch and think and notice things with that lens. And so wrote a collection, several a month. And after a year, I had a bunch. So I thought, what am I going to do? How do I release these into the wild? So I thought of publishing it. And I talked to a few publishers, and they're all like, oh, it's very nice, but... Oh, great, thanks. And I just don't have the stamina of our dear friend Madeline Langel. I can't take 70 rejections. I'm just not into that. So instead, I decided to go with Friesen Press to self-publish. And it's a hybrid model where they kind of shepherd you along. They do something, and then you do something, and they throw it back and forth and encourage you to do it that way. So I went with Friesen. And while I was doing that, I realized, I have these guided meditations, but I have been writing these funny little things, engaging with people from the Bible for years. And what if I would round them up? And then I went to my filing cabinet and went through old computer files and dug these things out. And I thought, well, should I freshen them up? There's the one that I wrote about Mary that sounded really young and naive, because I was young and naive when I wrote it. And I thought, oh, yeah, no, you can't pull it. Oh, wait a second. Oh, yeah. She was probably young and naive. So maybe we'll just let that stand, as embarrassing as it is now, from a different perspective. So yeah, I rounded up these friends and I tucked them in, and one of my professors at AMBS wrote a wonderful book called The Patient Ferment of the Early Church. A wonderful book to talk about how the church went from the stories we read in Acts to the next chapter. And so I thought, well, what if I would write something about one of his chapters? So I ventured out and did that. And then I was able to send it to him. He was already ailing at the point. And his wife read it to him, and afterwards he said to her, she got it. Which was high praise, right? When the author kind of says, yes, yes. So that was lovely. And then the request came from dear friends who were guest editors of Vision magazine to write something in honor of Dr. Mary Schertz and her retirement. So I told you that story, and that's what Tina made so beautifully come alive. Isn't that amazing? That was, yeah. Thank you. That was so fun to hear those words from a different place. Yeah. Yeah, so then it was time to make a cover. So I was trying to think of an image that would speak to the idea of that sacred interior space. And one thing that came to mind was a tree. I love nature, I love the natural world. And I thought, have you ever seen a tree with that little crack in it? And maybe there's a little hollow in there. And with my imagination, I like to think that maybe there's a tree nymph or a little garden gnome that lives in there. And I thought, oh, wouldn't that be fun to have on the cover? So I went out to nature and I took a bunch of pictures of places where these trees had cracks in them. And then submitted a couple of other things, and the artist, the designer, took that picture and slapped the title right on the nook. That's not going to work. And they also had this beautiful picture of the Iona Labyrinth. This is a stone meditation circle on the island of Iona in Scotland that Gilbert, my husband, took when we were there on pilgrimage. And so that made it to the front cover. And ironically, I didn't grow up loving green. And there's my mom giggling because she knows I'm not really terribly thrilled about mint green, but it is beautiful. So you just have to go with it. Sometimes life surprises you, right? It hands you these things and you just go, oh, okay, all right, that's all right. Then my baby will be green. It's okay. It's good. Love it. So that's a bit of the story of the Genesis, and it's really, really my hope in all of this effort that somebody somewhere picks up this book and comes to realize in a deeper way their own belovedness, and comes to understand the one who is love, who we sometimes call God, and we sometimes call divine mystery, and we sometimes call mystical flow. People have different words for this wonderful experience, being, energy, entity, uncreated light. Yeah. So if this book can help someone somewhere grow to love that you and your good creation more, it will be enough. Do people have questions about that? We'll take a little bit of time for Q&A. If there's Q&A on the chat, Arlen is there, and he is monitoring the computer. He'll give us so yeah, if you out there in Honduras or Ireland or Eastern Canada or Western Canada or some other blessed place like Ambler, Pennsylvania, want to ask a question, we're open. If not, we'll make Steve sing 7 or 8 more songs. No, I don't think he's up for that. He emailed me yesterday to say that he had a cold or symptoms, and I'm like, oh, great. But he came through. Yay for Steve.
I got tested.
Yes, he's tested. Anything online, Arlen? Anybody want to know anything about my book? John Hutton?
So we get to ask actual questions.
Actual questions of the actual author.
I just want to quickly say how much I've enjoyed hearing Steve again and a wonderful presentation, just bringing it alive. It's been 6 months since I've been out of the house.
I know. And you got dressed. You did it. Yay. Yay.
I got the dirty jeans off and lots of big ones. So I'm really looking forward to taking the book home with me tonight, and it's delightful. Did you sort of take the 2 parts of the book and just kind of, this is the first part and this is the second part, or are they kind of interwoven with each other, the meditations and the monologues?
Right, so the question is, did I interweave the monologues and the guided meditations, or are they two separate sections? And they are separate sections in the book. So I know when one person asked me, oh yeah, I'm looking forward to reading your book, I'm just gonna stay up all night and just gonna read it all the way through. And I said, well, hold off on that intention. Feel free to read the monologues all the way. And there is one dialogue, so there is a little bit of a misnomer. Yeah, you can read those all at once. But really, the guided meditations are a lot like fudge or chocolate. You really want to take a little piece and savor it. It's not like popcorn where you just gobble it all down. So yeah, if we were allowed to have food here, I would have served fudge tonight, just to say, take a little piece, take it in, savor it, notice the flavors, notice the undertones, and there's lots of ellipses in the guided meditations, and those are to create spaciousness. Like, just take some time. Arlen has a question from
Claire Ewart Fisher writes, thank you for sharing from your gentle spirit. I'm looking for a study meditation material for a group of women. Would you say this is a good prompt for this?
Thank you for that, Claire. The guided meditations are best used if one person reads it and the other people are allowed to just close their eyes or soften their gaze on a candle and take some time. So it's not like a theological reflection or, kind of your standard Bible study kind of resources. But if you are willing to become quiet and listen together to your interior spaces, this could be a profound experience if you're willing to go there, right? So it's not like your traditional Bible study, but I would be fascinated if you would be willing to try that and let me know how that goes, because I know when we pray on our own, there is something wonderful that happens in that private space. And when two or more are gathered and willing to engage at the level of your interior space and let those guards soften, it can be a real profound shift for your souls. How's that?
Anybody else?
Steve.
So I'm always surprised I'm often surprised when I write. Like there's something that my songs know that I don't know or didn't know. That doesn't always happen. I was wondering, what about this book surprised? What did you learn? What did the book teach you? Or what came out that you didn't know you knew? Did it resonate?
Yeah, and now I have to come up with an answer right away. Oh, Arlen's going to repeat the question so I can think another moment.
The question, Steve, and correct me if I'm wrong, is sometimes when you write a song, in your case, the song might teach you something. In the process of writing, have you been instructed in a certain way? Have you discovered something?
Yeah, and I notice this too when I do spiritual direction. So when I'm in a session with someone and I hear myself saying something and I think, that's awfully wise, if only I would do more of that. And we have a saying in spiritual direction circles, we have people are brought to us who we need to be with us, right? And I think I've had a similar experience where I wrote a guided meditation for the experience of disappointment. And then I had a disappointing experience. And I said to Gilbert, my partner, can you lead me in this? And he did. And it was long enough ago that I hadn't remembered exactly where it went. And that was helpful because I kind of wanted to just trust the process. And I did, and he did, and it was super helpful. So I thought, oh good, this is at least helping me. So maybe it can help someone else too. So yeah, sometimes you don't really, like you get to sing your songs over and over and over again, but I haven't worked with a lot of these pieces for a couple of years now. So to be able to experience one of my own coming back to teach me was a real gift in the end. Thank you.
Michelle Curtis from Pennsylvania asks, do you have a favorite among the monologues?
Oh, you want me to pick my kids? Come on, I love them all. I love them all. It was super, super fun to just see Tina do Mary's Martha. That was so delightful. I mostly knew what was coming, but there were a few lines that she said, and I'm like, oh, really? I wrote that. Okay, good. So that's fun. Yeah, some of them I wrote as gifts to people, and so when I read them, that connects me with the people I wrote, for whom I wrote. Yeah, maybe because I wrote Mary's Martha last. It's one of the ones that holds deeper affection for me. What's surprising is a number of people have told me how they like Not Mary. And I almost didn't include that one because she's not in the Bible. She's the one who didn't say yes. I imagined, like, yeah, at Christmas time we have all kinds of different ideas about different people in the Christmas story. And someone once said, like, what if Mary had said no? And then I thought, well, okay, let's imagine the person who wasn't Mary and how she did say no. So I wrote that, and people connect. People connect with that. And maybe it's because we sometimes hesitate. We sometimes don't say yes when maybe we could have said yes. So.
That's one of my favorite.
Is it? That's amazing.
Aisha Ants writes, what percentage of the book is guided meditations and what percentage is monologues?
Yeah, okay. Percents. Well, the guided, sorry? Oh, okay. The guided meditations are each shorter, but they end on page 74. So, and they start, yeah, on page 1. And then we go to gratitude. My acknowledgements start on page 139. So if you can see, these are the guided meditations, and these are the monologues. Can you see that? It's about half and half, eh? I can do a statistical analysis from my spreadsheet and get back to you later. I do have a spreadsheet. I can tell you all kinds of weird facts, but not tonight. You have to email me those.
Any other questions?
Monica.
I've repeatedly been drawn into your biblical storytelling over the years. My jaw drops when you talk about Bible stories and how they come alive. I really value that in you. And wondering where your passion for that was birthed. And that comes out of this book. And where was that birthed? And how was it nurtured over the years?
Yeah. Do you want to?
So Monica is asking, where did your passion and inspiration for writing biblical monologues emerge? And just a great appreciation for them.
I might come up with a better answer later, but for now, with Arlen right beside me, it brings me back to days when we were at CNBC together, and we were part of the CNBC Players.
And the story of Joseph.
Yes, we did, like chapters of Genesis. This is the story of Joseph. That's how it started, and it went through a big chunk of his life. And we took that on the road, and that was lots of fun to engage in the story that way. Yeah, a sense of the drama. And over time, that has evolved into acquiring a lot of dead friends. That sounds weird, doesn't it? But I think of people like Julian of Norwich and Bridget of Ireland and Hildegard of Bingen. I've started to see them kind of as my friends, like wise, older older aunts, advisors, wisdom keepers. But to have the great cloud of witnesses as a real thing has been a huge gift for me and sustaining energy through hard times. So yeah, to be able to put some of those old friends to text, to print. Maybe there's another one coming about Bridget and Hildegard and Julian.
And it's remarkable what writing will lend your friendship to another, right? We will
Yeah.
get to know other folks in a new way this way. So,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
I'm going to turn it to Steve one more time.
Tina, I got to say that next time I do an album release concert, I'm going to get you to come and read my lyrics. That was awesome. I had the same. I'm thinking, Laura wrote that? Like the way you brought that to life was just so wonderful, and that's its own exercise in imagination. And in a sense, you contribute a whole other language to that tale that I wouldn't have picked up on a lot of that stuff, and it is what you wrote. But it was pretty lovely. I love it when that kind of stuff happens, eh? Yeah. Okay. So here's a bit of a collaboration. I'll close with this one. I phoned Laura this afternoon and said, is there anything in particular you'd like me to sing? And she really didn't want me to sing Wings of an Eagle. And so I was really hurt by that. But after I got over that deep pain, I said, is there anything else? And so we had a chat back and forth. Actually, Laura, again, she worked with me for years, and she kind of knows me well. And that Wings is just kind of a funny joke. It's a song that I get asked to do a lot, and I'm happy that people like it, but I don't need to hear it again. So it's that kind of a thing. So she knows that. But she asked me if I'd do Deep Calls to Deep. And I said, of course, I'll do that. And then she said, but could you slow it down? I said, oh, sure, make it more of a prayer. And I said, sure. And she said, could you change the pronoun to you? So that's more to God rather than about God. And I thought, well, that's not going to work. But after we got off the phone call, I thought, I'm going to do it because she asked. And then I sat with it for a while, and it really transforms the song. It's quite lovely. So I'm going to do my best. I had to change a couple lyrics just to make the rhyme scheme right. So. Deep calls to deep, and my soul finds its rest within your will. You are my God, the yearning of my soul your touch can still. And each rare moment I've felt your presence, I shall remember and forever cherish. Deep calls to deep, and at your feast I am a welcome guest. You give me food, the hunger of my soul is laid to rest. And each rare moment I felt your presence, I shall remember and forever cherish. Deep calls to deep, for you created me to be your own. You understand the joy And each rare moment I felt your presence, I shall remember and forever cherish. And each rare moment I felt your presence, I shall remember and forever cherish. Cherish. Cherish.
Laura, come forward. We have about 39 people joining us live stream right now. Their names, those that have given their names are in here, and all your names are in here. And we have 2 door prizes. And you want to explain
Yeah, sure.
what you are giving?
So these are ebook codes that will enable you to go onto Apple and get a free download of the Apple ebook. So if you don't have a way to do that, we can talk about that. But it is sort of specific, and we thought we could give a physical copy, but then that kind of precludes the folks out there. So these are 2 Apple ebook codes. I'm getting a lot of nods. So you people are all good and techie savvy and all that good stuff. So the first one is going to this person here. Oh, Yael. Yay! So I'll send you an email with that code in it and all the instructions. Okay, so the next person is this person, Leda Garcia in Honduras. I really hope that it's going to work in Honduras. If not, we will so be in touch, my little daughter. Okay.
And for those of you who don't have a copy and would like a physical copy, we will open Common Word momentarily after this program is finished. And others of you at further distance can purchase a physical copy. We'll ship it to you. Go to commonword.ca. It's also available to borrow from Common Word. We are both a retail center as well as a library. Laura is here for those of you in person to sign copies at the table. This program has been recorded. It will live on at commonword.ca, so certainly let others know that may have had interest in being here. Thank you all for your engagement tonight. It's been a good evening. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Dorothy. Thank you, Tina, for your participation. And let's give Laura our warm appreciation for her work. May we each take the journey into our interior spaces where God's Spirit is active. I wish you all safety and good health and a good night. Thanks for coming.